Good afternoon. Shall we start? Harris Trump wifer votes in nail biting race. Now, obviously, as of now, Trump is leading. Class start time ఉంది Trump leading లో ఉన్నాడు ఇప్పుడు. But obviously, as I mentioned earlier, only thing it is essential for is repercussions of victory of Trump or Harris on India as per our international relations dimension, and other thing, comparison of US presidential elections with Indian presidential elections. Okay, that presidential election comparison we will deal in our weekly class. అండ్ నౌ ఆబ్వియస్లీ ఇంకా మనకైతే ఫిక్స్ అవ్వలేదు ఎవరు గెలిచారో దాన్ని బట్టి ఇంపాక్ట్ ఎలా ఉంటుందో మనం అనలైజ్ చేయొచ్చు. ఓకే, బట్ మోస్ట్ అజంప్షన్స్ ట్రంపే వస్తారని చెప్తున్నారు. అండ్ ఎస్టర్డే సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ హ్యాడ్ గివెన్ ఎ ల్యాండ్ మార్క్ జడ్జ్మెంట్ రిగార్డింగ్ రైట్ టు ప్రాపర్టీ. సే అర్లియర్ ఈజ్ రైట్ టు ప్రాపర్టీ ఏ ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్. అర్లియర్ రైట్ టు ప్రాపర్టీ ఈజ్ ఏ 7th ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్. నౌ అయితే ఆ తర్వాత రిపీటెడ్ జడ్జ్మెంట్స్ దాని ద్వారా right to properly had become just a constitutional right or constitutional right or legal right. Difference తెలిసిందా ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్కి కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ రైట్కి ఏంటి? సి కోర్ వర్డ్స్ కోర్ పాలిటీలోకి వెళ్తే వీ కాంట్ డిఫైన్ క్లియర్లీ, బట్ ఫర్ ష్యూర్ వీ కెన్ మేక్ ఎ డిస్టింక్షన్ బిట్వీన్ ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్ అండ్ అదర్ రైట్స్. ఓకే, ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్ విచ్ ఆర్ డైరెక్ట్లీ మెన్షన్డ్ ఇన్ Part 3 of the Constitution. Part 3, Article 12 to 35. Any rights which are directly mentioned in Part 3, Article 12 to 35, those are called as fundamental rights. Now, Constitution లోని different ప్లేసెస్లో కూడా మిగిలిన రైట్స్ ఉన్నాయి. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్, as part of Article 300A, right to property was mentioned. Okay, right to property was mentioned, but it is not mentioned in this Part 3. That's why it is not fundamental right. We just call it as constitutional right. Now, legal right ఏంటి అంటే is constitutional law, central law is a law, so all these are laws. So ఈ అన్నిటిని కూడా మనం లీగల్ రైట్స్ అనొచ్చు. సో దానికి ఫార్ అవే డిస్టింక్షన్ ఏం లేదు, బట్ ఓన్లీ మేజర్ డిస్టింక్షన్ ఈస్ వెదర్ రైట్ దిస్ ఎనీథింగ్ ఈజ్ ఎ ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్ ఆర్ నాట్. ఇఫ్ అట్ ఆల్ ఎనీథింగ్ ఈజ్ మెన్షన్ అండర్ దిస్, it is called as fundamental right. And one more thing is, Supreme Court in its number of judgments had expanded the scope of some of the fundamental rights. For example, right to life and this personal liberty అనేది ఏ ఆర్టికల్లో ఉంటుంది? Article 21. బట్ డిఫరెంట్ జడ్జ్మెంట్స్ ద్వారా సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ డ్యూరింగ్ నెంబర్ ఆఫ్ జడ్జ్మెంట్స్ హ్యాడ్ ఎక్స్పాండెడ్ ద స్కోప్ ఆఫ్ Article 21 or some other legislations also, even Article 19 also. For example, in case Puttaswamy case, Supreme Court proclaimed that right to privacy will also be coming under right to life under Article 21. Okay, so now if a question comes on right to privacy, whether it is a fundamental right or not? Yes, so it is a fundamental right under Article 21. Okay, so in the exams repeatedly you will be getting these sort of things. If those are anything in use, అది అర్థం, డిస్టింక్షన్ అయితే అర్థమైంది కదా ఇప్పుడు. నౌ వై వాట్ విల్ ఎనీ సార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్ విల్ గెట్ ఇన్ ఎక్స్ట్రా అదర్ దాన్ దిస్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ రైట్స్? వాట్ మోర్ దే విల్ బి గెట్టింగ్? ద మేజర్ థింగ్ హియర్ ఈస్, ఇఫ్ there is any sort of violation of fundamental rights, we can directly go to Supreme Court. That is not the case with other legislations. So we can directly go to Supreme Court under Article 32 for the Supreme Court, under Article 226 towards the High Court. Okay, that is not possible with other legislations. Okay, and Supreme Court also had the power to issue writs for better implementation of these fundamental rights. That power is not available to other rights. That is the major difference. Okay, and one more thing, why fundamental rights are essential, or why we are having giving lot of significance. If any legislation is being made in the country, if it is violative of the fundamental rights, citing it as a reason, that legislation can be struck down by the Supreme Court. Okay, so if any legislation by the central government or the state government is being made which is violative of the fundamental right, Supreme Court can struck down that legislation, quoting that it is violating fundamental rights. Okay, there is an exception by different cases. Some exceptions have been come. ఓన్లీ ఎక్సెప్షన్ నౌ యాక్సెప్టబుల్. యాక్చువల్లీ ఏంటంటే సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ had ఐడెంటిఫైడ్ different articles or different DPSPs which can violate fundamental rights from the independence, from the beginning of the first day of our country. There is repeated violations of fundamental rights. So eventually many judgments had come. Final present stand is, in your polity classes you will be knowing about each and everything. The present stand is, as per Minerva Mills case of 1980, there is requirement of harmonious construction between fundamental rights and DPSP. Means to implement some DPSPs, government can violate fundamental rights. అది కూడా ఏవో కూడా సుప్రీంకోర్టు మెన్షన్ చేసింది. ఓన్లీ టు ఇంప్లిమెంట్ ఆర్టికల్ 39B and article 39C, article 14 and article 19 of fundamental rights can be violated. Okay, so generally all fundamental rights are greater than all DPSPs or any other thing. Fundamental rights are always greater than DPSP, with just one exception, that article 39B or C of DPSP is greater than article 14 or 19. ఇప్పుడు 39B and C అంటే ఏంటంటే, ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఫర్ బిల్డింగ్ ఇన్ఈక్వాలిటీని తగ్గించడానికి, డిస్ట్రిబ్యూషన్ ఆఫ్ రిసోర్సెస్, గవర్నమెంట్ కెన్ మేక్ సమ్ లెజిస్లేషన్స్. ఓకే, సో ఇట్లాగా డిఫరెంట్ జడ్జ్మెంట్స్లో వచ్చింది. దిస్ ఫైనల్లీ కేమ్ టు అన్ ఎండ్ ఇన్ 42nd కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ అమెండ్మెంట్. తర్వాత రిపీటెడ్ జడ్జ్మెంట్స్లో వచ్చింది. హియర్ యూ నీడ్ టు నో అబౌట్ మినర్వా మిల్స్ కేస్. ఎగ్జామ్లో డైరెక్ట్గా వస్తుంది. హార్మోనియస్ కన్స్ట్రక్షన్ బిట్వీన్ ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్ అండ్ డిపిఎస్పి ఈ స్పోకెన్ ఇన్ మినర్వా మిల్స్ కేస్. అంటే సి ఫ్రమ్ ద బిగినింగ్, ఇప్పుడు ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్ అంటే ఏంటి? ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్ ఈ డిస్కషన్స్ అంతా ఎందుకు వచ్చాయంటే, ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్ అంటే ఏంటి? ఫండమెంటల్ మీన్స్ విచ్ ఆర్ వెరీ మచ్ ఎసెన్షియల్ ఫర్ లీడింగ్ ఎ లైఫ్. ఓకే, ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్ ఆర్ బేసికల్లీ పొలిటికల్ రైట్స్. డిపిఎస్పిస్ డైరెక్టివ్ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్ ఆఫ్ స్టేట్ పాలసీ. సో డైరెక్టివ్ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్ అంటే ఏంటి? డైరెక్టివ్ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్ మీన్స్ దీస్ ఆర్ టైప్ ఆఫ్ డైరెక్షన్స్ ఆర్ గైడ్లైన్స్ given by the constitution to the governments. Okay, now these DPSPs are social and economic rights. These fundamental rights are political rights. Now what happens is that whenever government is trying to implement some DPSPs, it is violating fundamental rights. So from the beginning, from the initial first constitutional amendment itself, we are facing this divergence. Finally we had come to a conclusion in this Minerva Mills case. Harmonious construction between fundamental rights and DPSP. Okay, for sure we need to maintain balance between fundamental rights and DPSP. Okay, now what is yesterday's judgment is, Supreme Court says that private property, government cannot say that we can acquire any sort of private property. There is limitation to everything. Supreme Court, so what is their meaning is that government generally cannot acquire any sort of private property. There is restrictions on it. Government cannot say that for the betterment of the society, to do common good to the society, we are acquiring each and every private property. It is not at all possible. And Supreme Court nena landmark judgment ichindi. 9 judge bench, constitutional bench. Okay, see now you need to know about constitutional bench. Constitutional bench in India is formed under article 145. Okay, article 145. Now this constitutional bench ki major requirement endante, number of judges in this constitutional bench will be 5 or more. Will be 5 or more. 5 or more. Because constitutional bench in the sense that there is some question on some provision of the constitution. So obviously a single judge bench or a just 2 or 3 judge bench is not sufficient. So that's why we are going for some minimum of 5 judge bench case. Okay, but for example ఈ జడ్జెస్ ఈ బెంచెస్ ఇవన్నీ ఎందుకంటే it is assumed that a 7-judge bench case, 7-judge bench is having more weightage than 5-judge bench, which means if a judgment has been given by a single judge or a 3-judge bench, again a petition on 5-judge bench or 7-judge bench can be made. If they will be countering the earlier opinion, that 7-judge bench opinion will be the final decision. Okay, since there are more number of people, there will be more acceptance to that judgment. So highest ever made judge bench is 13-judge bench in Keshwananda Bharati case. Okay. Yeah, and why government, Supreme Court, why it had given this judgment? Because it had quoted that in the beginning or else during independence, after independence, our economic situation is different. We are more leaned towards socialism. Okay, so public participation, public in the sense government participation is essential. But post LPG reforms, post 1991 LPG reforms, private sector participation has increased manifold. Okay, since private sector participation has increased manifold, it is not at all right to acquire the property as and when government requires. Okay, so this is Supreme Court validity judgment, but government might counter, we don't know what will be happening. As of now, Supreme Court had given this judgment. Okay, Telangana Caste Census to become model for the country, says Rahul Gandhi. Now, as a part of this caste census, the major thing here is Congress government had made an election agenda in Telangana and some other states that they will be doing caste census. Even in the national elections of 2024 also, Congress promised that if UPA will be coming to, the India Alliance will be coming to power, they will be doing national level caste census. Now, ఇది ఎందుకు అంటే there is no proper listing of BCs, majorly BCs. What is the population of BCs? What are the sub-classification of BCs? There is no valuable data. So, if the data comes out, they can make modification in the reservation pattern. This is the idea of India Alliance. Okay. Now, what is the reservation for OBCs? 27%. వాళ్ళ ఉద్దేశం ఏంటంటే వీఆర్ గివింగ్ 27%, బట్ దెర్ ఈస్ నో అజంప్షన్, వీ డు నాట్ నో యాక్యురేట్లీ హౌ మచ్ ఈస్ ద పాపులేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఓబీసీస్. సో వీ నీడ్ ఏ క్యాస్ట్ సెన్సస్, హౌ మచ్ ఓబీసీస్ ఆర్ దేర్, వాట్ ఆర్ ద different subcaste in it, then we can get to some logical conclusion. Okay, now some opposition party, ruling party says that it is some election plank, not of any use. Okay, అయితే మనకి దీన్ని ఏం తీసుకోవాల్సింది ఏం లేదు, not at all essential to our prelims, but since it is happening in the country, we need to know it, that's all. And one more thing, opposite to it or else contradictory to it, we can say that Andhra Pradesh government had mooted skill census. This is very important for our exam. Okay, you can quote in whatever answers you like, which is relevant to it. For example, Andhra Pradesh government had already released this memorandum also regarding the skill census. What is the major idea backing the skill census? No. What happens in the skill census? Means what are the skill sets of different individual? What is our education standard? What are the different skills we are having? What probable jobs we can do? Now, if we will be knowing what are the skill sets, government can try for giving relevant jobs, or else if you are having very low skills, government can try for upskilling. If our skill is outdated, government can go for some reskilling, can provide some skill development cases. So this is very much essential step. Why it is essential? Because I am linking here with another topic. See, as of now, 63% of Indian population are working age population. Okay, 63% of the Indian population are working age population, and median age of India is 28 years. Median age of India is 28 years, means we are very youthful. India is relatively having youthful demography, but this is not the case with other countries. So now is the time for us. Estimates say that up to 2036, we will be enjoying this youthful demography. Now, so next coming 10 to 15 years will be our time. So we have to try for maximum economic growth in this 10 to 15 years. Now, the economic growth which the country is gaining because of huge number of working age population is called as anthropology is called as demographic dividend. So economic growth because of huge number of working age population is called as demographic dividend. Now here the thing comes is, what is the guarantee that working age population are more, we will be getting economic growth if they are not at all working, if they are facing the problem of unemployment, right? People ఉన్నంత మాత్రం నేను growth వచ్చేది కదా. If all are lying on roads or else we are watching Devara and all movies, ఏం జరగదు కదా అప్పుడు. So the thing is, why as Tejashwi, we are having the major problem of unemployment, and that unemployment is because of lack of employability. Lack of employability in the country. Employability means we are willing to work, but we are not having that much skills to gain employment. సో మార్కెట్లో ఉండాల్సినంత ఎంప్లాయ్మెంట్కి కావాల్సిన స్కిల్స్ మనకు లేవు. సో ద థింగ్ వీ ఎసెన్షియల్ ఇయర్ ఈస్ స్కిల్ డెవలప్మెంట్. సో ఆ స్కిల్ హౌ మచ్ స్కిల్ డెవలప్మెంట్ ఈస్ నీడెడ్, who want which type of skill development, we will be getting to know because of this skill census. You can quote this as an best example. Since process has been started, it didn't complete as of now, but process has been started in Andhra Pradesh. You can quote it in number of places. In GS1 society, GS2 social justice, GS2 governance, polity part, GS3 part, ethics part. You can quote wherever it is possible, whenever it is relevant. Because see, education, health, skill development, all these topics are favorite topics of UPSC. They can ask in any paper. Okay. Specifically, they points to Indian society part. Okay. Skill census అర్థమైంది కదా. See this page number 5. నితీష్ కుమార్ యాడ్ ఉంది కదా. See that place where that event is happening, in which sports complex? What is the history behind Rajgir? Why Rajgir is famous? Rajgir, Mauryas, Magadhan Empire, Ashoka, ఏది గుర్తురాట్లే, మర్చిపోయారు కదా. సో రివిజన్ ఈజ్ ఎసెన్షియల్. Solemn promise, there can be no further delay in restoring statehood for J&K. Yesterday we had discussed about this, right? J&K is demanding statehood for it. Now there are number of reasons why we are having hesitation towards J&K. The major problem here is internal security challenge because of J&K militancy. Okay, repeated articles అయితే చదవక్కర్లేదు, మనకు టైం వేస్ట్ అంతే. Here downside, a setback. The LDP's loss of majority in Japan could have implications for the world. See, there they are talking about LDP, no? It is related to Japanese elections. In Japan also, recently elections had happened. Now, there is no confirmative government as of now. The government which is ruling from the past 6 decades in Japan, it had ruled most of the times in the past 6 decades, it had lost now. It will be having a long-term impact on worldwide relations because Japan is a major democracy in the world. Japan is part of G7. India and Japan are having very good relations. So since after many years a new dispensation is coming in Japan, it will be affecting India-Japanese relations. Now see, until now UPSC had never asked the questions in prelims relating to individual country relations, but they had asked if there are any sort of new initiatives which both the countries had launched, any sort of agreement signed between them. Okay, now for our mains we need to know specifically, as I mentioned earlier, for every country we need to know about, for major countries we need to know about convergences, divergences, measures which are being taken and implications of it. This is common for every major country, superpowers, neighboring countries majorly. Okay, now with Japan, India is having long-term relations. For example, we are planning to develop bullet train with the help of Japan, right? Similarly, India and Japan both are conducting Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. Okay. Means Japan and India will be jointly funding the growth of Africa. That is very much essential. And also, India is getting lot of money from Japanese ODA, Overseas Development Assistance. Okay. Japan is giving lot of ODA to India. Means some sort of help ankonde. Or else advances, loans with very concessional interest rate. Okay. Now, all these will be having implications. Next. Aadhaar biometric data access will aid forensics. See, now most of the people in the country are having Aadhaar. Is Aadhaar only to the citizens? Only to citizens? No. Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship actually. Okay. Aadhaar is not at all accepted as a proof of citizenship. Okay. కొంచెం స్టేరింగ్ అనిపించినా అదే కరెక్ట్. ఓకే. నౌ Aadhaar got legal backing based on Aadhaar Act 2016. Now this Aadhaar is essential, very much essential for our DBT projects. DBT means direct benefit transfer schemes. And we are having JAM Trinity. What is this JAM Trinity? Jandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity. For example, we are having LPG cylinder scheme, Ujjwala Yojana. In that Ujjwala Yojana, we will be getting subsidies for procuring LPG gas cylinders. That is possible by this JAM. Jandan account means zero balance account, which is opened by the central government, which is linked to Aadhaar, and that account is linked to mobile number. So with this linkage, we can do many transactions transparently. Corruption can be avoided. Now earlier what happens? Earlier when all this technology, digitalization is not there, we used to lot of recommendations would have been done. Now just we need to apply on the website or the app. If we are having all the required credentials or required criteria, we will be selected to that scheme. Now that is possible only because of this JAM Trinity or this Aadhaar. This Aadhaar is a backing infrastructure, backing digital infrastructure. That is called as digital public infrastructure. Digital public infrastructure. The things which are supporting for the success of other schemes or else any sort of new initiatives, digitally we call them as DPIs, digital public infrastructure. Government is pushing DPIs to a larger scale. Even in recently concluded G20 summit in India also, government had pushed for DPIs across the world. For example, UPI is one DPI. Based on that UPI, we had built PhonePe, BharatPe and all. Right. So now these are backing digital infrastructure, which are called as DPIs, digital public infrastructure. You learned about ONDC. ONDC means similar to Zomato from the government side. Ante kada. So all these are possible. All these are possible because of the push of digitalization and technology growth from the government of India. Now this article specifically points about Aadhaar. This article says that using the Aadhaar data, we can, నేను న్యూస్ వచ్చే దాంట్లో నేను న్యూస్ వచ్చేది మొత్తం చెప్పట్లేదు, ఎందుకంటే ద థింగ్స్ విచ్ ఆర్ ఎసెన్షియల్ ఫర్ ద ఎగ్జామ్ ఈజ్ ఓన్లీ ఇంపార్టెంట్ ఫర్ యూ. ఓకే. అండ్ వీ నీడ్ టు నో అబౌట్ ద బ్యాక్గ్రౌండ్ లింకేజెస్. ఇవేవి అక్కడ రాయరు యాక్చువల్లీ. వాట్ ఆర్ ఎసెన్షియల్ ఫర్ ద ఎగ్జామ్ ఐ ఎమ్ టీచింగ్ టు యూ. నౌ ఇన్ Aadhaar Act, that article says that using the Aadhaar biometrics, we can trace criminals, we can find out who are doing wrongs. But there is limitation to it. Why? Because first of all, there is privacy angle. directly in the Aadhaar Act itself, it has been mentioned that under section 33 of 1 of the Aadhaar Act permits the disclosure of certain information under an order of the court not inferior to that of the High Court. So if High Court orders, only High Court and above, not the lower courts. If High Court and above courts orders, the authority who is handling Aadhaar, this is the authority who is handling Aadhaar, I will be telling about it. If High Court wants them, or High Court gives them judgment that you need to submit the details, then this UIDAI can give details of our Aadhaar about the people they are asking. But even then also, they can't give details about our biometrics, about our iris or about our fingerprint. That is directly mentioned in section 29 of the 1. Okay, so core biometric information cannot be given. Now if that have been given, we will be facing digital privacy issue, cyber security issues, ఇవన్నీ ఉంటాయి కదా. బట్ ఈ ఆర్టికల్ వాళ్ళు ఎసెన్షియల్గా ఏం చెప్తున్నారంటే there is requirement for using Aadhaar data for catching the criminals and all. That will be having both sides argument to give or not to give. That is not our cup of tea now. Science, technology, ఈ UIDAI అనేది this Aadhaar Act మొత్తాన్ని ఇంప్లిమెంట్ చేసే అథారిటీ. It is a statutory body formed by this Aadhaar Act. Okay, UIDAI, Unique Identification Authority of India. Now about this STEM, science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Now as per our exam, we can quote about science in our society paper or GS2 paper. Majorly మన ఇండియాలో ఎప్పుడు ఉండే డిస్కషన్ ఏంటంటే participation of women in STEM is very low. Okay, women participation in STEM is very low. Also the research facilities on STEM is relatively low, means the spending of R&D in the country is low. Earlier also I had mentioned, it is called as gross expenditure on research and development. It is just 0.65% of India's GDP. 0.65% of India's GDP. Japan is spending around 4% of GDP. Many countries are spending more than 2% of the GDP, but India is spending only 0.65% of the GDP. Now, for development of any sort of thing, research is essential. Right or wrong? Essential kada. So, government to give major push to this STEM courses and also research. Yes, Sharna. STEM means science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Means these 4 fields in our country. Major problem among these 4 fields is women participation is relatively low in the STEM courses. And one of the major thing here is, from earlier times also it is expected that women can do better in arts and humanities. Of course, అదైతే తప్పు అనుకోండి, preconceived notions ఉంటాయి కదా కొన్ని. So it is part of one of our preconceived notions. Similarly, one more problem with respect to growth of STEM in India is we are having very less research focus. Even now also, compared to our population of 145 to 150 crores, our patents are very less. Our research expenditure is very less, just 0.65% of India's GDP, whereas other countries' expenditure on R&D is very much high. So, considering all these scenarios, Government of India around 3 months back has launched a new scheme called Anusandhan National Research Foundation with funding of around